Take it away, Dave and Mackie.
Well, you're not going to guess. Or maybe you will. This is Dave.
And Mackie.
Yeah, it's our Shiny Side Out. Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out on WZZR, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. And Freedom Slips is home to fresh, unfiltered ideas and conversations, both on the radio and in the chat room. And it's also a great place to get your merch. This is show number 544.
My goodness. 440 and 500.
That's
Who would have thunk
correct.
it? Who would have thunk it?
I know, right? Catch, Mackie and I, Shiny Side Out, on air, online, and possibly anywhere that you go, as long as you've got coverage. You can do that on your smart device, and via an app that you can get, and there's plenty of apps that support this digital radio platform. However, if you just want to, stay inside because it's sweltering outside, stay in your air conditioning, you can sit at home in your favorite chair listening to us through a Grace Tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris's show, that was the one that's just been on. If you've only just tuned in, you did miss a great show. She just now had Cyber Witch Cafe with Niche and herself, and the topic was all that is magical, and then possession. I caught the last half of the show, and it was great. It's always great. She always has great guests and great topics. But if you don't know who she is, this is Solaris Blue Raven. Then guess what you can do? If you don't know who she is, you can check her out. Now, we've got an archive at Freedom Slips. You can jump in there and download all the shows that she's ever made. Well, all that's in the archive. Or you can grab ours from there, or any other of the hosts' shows. They all get recorded automatically in MP3 format. Remember that? Remember iPods and portable MP3 players? Well, they went the way of the Dodo. It was like cassette players, personal cassette players. Remember the Walkman was the thing that I remember having. I had one that was yellow, waterproof, and made by Sony with waterproof headphones. And it was solar powered.
Nice.
And they were the best thing. It cost $600.
600 million?
No, just 600. And in those days, we were only getting, actually, I was on about 40 grand a year in my second year of working. I was raking it in the data center that I was working at for Philips. But and with that, I spent about a month's wage on it. It was crazy. Yeah. Everyone's going, wow, look at that.
You had to have one. Look at you, Mr. High-Tech Super Dude. They call you High-Tech Super Dude, right?
Yeah, that's right. But the Sony headphones were vertical headphones that you wore with a chrome metal band across the top of your head. But they wedged, and I remember those days, they had a cable, and they wedged in your ears vertically, not taking up your entire ear canal. So you could still hear everything around you, which was really good. Not like today. You're captive to whatever thing you're listening to, and then you're a bit shocked because, the car behind you is nudging the back of your legs. What? Get out of the way. So the archives are free. And as part of our welcome to country, I'm broadcasting out of Darkinjung country. Now, you might hear me say Darkinjung or Darkinjung, Darkinjung. They're all different pronunciations, and no one has declared any of them to be incorrect. Mackie, where are you broadcasting from today?
Yeah, again, similarly, Darak or Daruk, heard a different pronunciation there as well. But it is, I say Darak country here.
Yeah. And Mackie and I, because we've done our research, we know what respective countries we're broadcasting from. we pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And we do ask that you research which traditional custodians of the land were where you live, and do think about thinking about them and how they lived, because it might be really important soon. Mecky, guess what?
5.
Close.
Oh, hot dog.
If you said Pepsi, you get half a credit.
Woo! Oh, no. I did.
I did.
I said it first.
Well, we'll fix that in post.
Uh,
Yeah, you know how I reported last week that the Earth is spinning faster? It's still spinning faster.
and it's
broken another
round,
new record.
also round.
It is, well, and it's an oblique spherical.
And they've only reported last week. It's hot off the press. The Earth is, well, sort of round, kind of round, bulgy with
Yeah, it's an oblique spheroidal. So, it's spinning faster. So if you think those days it is flying by, well, it's true. It is true. And we in the Southern Hemisphere, we're about to emerge into spring, and the Northern Hemisphere is really doing it tough. There's a massive heat waves. Things are on fire.
Yeah.
There's almost no water, but we'll talk about that a bit later on. Becky, what have you seen in the news this week?
Look, the one thing that stood out was, of course, what's happening in Ukraine still now. The problem that we're facing in the Ukraine specifically is that the Russians have captured the largest, for a while now, a few weeks, the largest nuclear reactor in Europe. And remember, though, that Chernobyl was also in the Ukraine. People forget that. So the largest active operating reactor is in the Ukraine. It was captured by Russians, and it is under attack. That's not a good thing. But the thing is this: if it were to come to an accident in that area, right? If it were, the fallout because of the way the wind blows, there's a movie. Anyway, it would actually go west, and that means it would go into Russia itself, into Moscow, Poland, Germany, etc.
East,
etc.
No,
etc. Sorry. No, west. No. It would go west. It comes out of the east, but it blows westwards because the reactor is actually in the east, so it would blow west into the west, and it would blow into Moscow and Poland, Germany, etc. This was exactly what happened with Chernobyl. The prevailing winds, they were blowing into the west, right? It came out of the east so everything drifts west. In those terms, and we know that happened. So we know what happened with Chernobyl. The same thing will happen with this reactor, and that's not a good thing. Not a good thing. Hello?
Yeah, well, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, good man.
Well, I'm glad we covered that up.
It's it's dreadful. Other than that, though, I mean, there are now people. I've seen some memes that say, well, the raid was undertaken to get the material that Trump has on his political opponents, the incriminating evidence that Trump might have on his opponents. Now, again, as a theory, it's as good as any other, but I'm not sure. One thing I'm certain of, though, Dave, is this: and there's no way that Donald Trump will be allowed to run for president.
Oh, that's what this whole thing is all about, to prevent him from doing that.
It's not going to happen.
Well, they're making every effort to prevent it from occurring. I mean, that's what's really going on here, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not it's lawful, that can be decided later on.
That's right.
Isn't that really strange that the world is witnessing the cancellation of someone who could be in opposition? Oh no, that happens everywhere.
Well, it does. And so it happens in America. I think the United States of America, might require what it likes to prescribe to others, which is, in fact, election observers. So I think we should have election observers in the states. That go in and monitor the fairness and above board the conduct of elections, election officials, counting of votes, etc. Imagine that if the UN starts sending people into the US for that purpose. That would be something. I don't think they would be too happy with that.
Well, so where you were at with the nuclear power plant and the capturing of it. So the French nuclear, what are they called? I forget the name of them. They observe all of the reactors around the world.
Right.
And it's that group who had, there was no agreement until I think today or just last night, where Russia has now suggested, because the call was for, we need nuclear inspectors to go in and just make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
And Russia had, requested that didn't happen. And I think they caved last night. So
really?
That's going to happen now. They're going to allow the inspectors to come in and have a look just to make sure it's all above board. But there's rumors to suggest that is a safe haven for Russian troops right now.
So they say, because obviously the Ukrainians would be insane to shell it.
You can't. That's right.
It's like, so they're using, rather than having a human shield, even though they're, obviously nuclear engineers, that they're using, it's a nuclear shield, really. It's what it is.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
You just wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't. No, it's insane.
So look, Meki, I shared that image with the way that the winds work, depending on what latitude you're at.
Yep.
And you're right. So
I know, I was in Europe when Chernobyl blew up, dude.
No, I'm not saying you weren't. But this is for the listeners who might have had some conflicting opinion about that.
Oh, really? No, guys. So just to be clear, in 1986, I was living in Europe, and most of my family on my mother's side had thyroid issues, and pretty bad ones.
That's right. That's why you have the green salt.
Exactly, because high in iodine.
And iodine fills up your lymph nodes.
Yep.
And your thyroid, and prevents the radioactive iodine from going in there.
Correct. So, but just to be clear,
cholesterol, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
at least you're alive.
It is a thing.
With poor cholesterol.
But the Russians didn't tell us for weeks.
I
mean, you go, what? No, nothing. I go, holy moly, nothing. Yep, nothing. So that was a bit. I think that was a bit rich. Rich. If something like that happens,
well, it's common. Even Japan declined to suggest that there was any meltdowns at Fukushima.
Fuku, what now? No, you must be mistaken.
3 of the 4 melted down.
Different country.
What?
Different country. Didn't happen here.
Huh?
What? Who?
Yeah, no, it's all under control. See, because there's no problem.
No.
Which problem are you talking about? Because we haven't got a problem. It must be someone else. I think he's talking to you. Mr. Sampson, Mr. Simpson, when I stomp on your foot and I say, hello, Mr. Sampson, you say hello. Hello, Mr. Sampson.
I think it's talking to you.
So look, it's not uncommon for a country to deny that there's a problem, and it's probably just red tape to begin with.
Yeah, of course.
And the same with Chernobyl. Have you seen the recreation of that?
Yes.
It was so hard to watch for me, watching the lack of due care.
Yeah.
For human life, but I recognise that. Look, that was the style at the time by the governance at the time.
Oh yeah.
What are you going to do?
And look, that's the thing, though, right? I mean, it reminded me just the way they treated human life in that particular scenario, or of the way they treated their troops in World War II.
Yeah.
So, like, out of every 10 soldiers, one would have a rifle, and the rest would just join him in running towards the German lines. And if the Germans were shooting at them, they might run backwards. But if they were running backwards, what the old people would do is the only machine guns in the field would be pointed at their own soldiers running away from the enemy. So you didn't realize this is what happened.
You can die one way or the other. It's up to you.
Yeah. It's but again, and ultimately that's what the Russians did. They just kept sending people against the Germans until hopefully the Germans would run out of bullets. That has to happen
at some point. That's right. That's right.
And it did.
Wow. Yeah, look. It's shocking. It's shocking to hear that was the entire plan.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
It's like the last scenes from Blackadder, World War One.
I know.
So with the war going on, the distractions we're seeing with Trump, because no one really cares now. The virus. What virus?
What virus? Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, that's right.
We have a virus now?
Well, we have a whole bunch of them. Diphtheria raised its head in Australia.
Yeah, I know that.
Again.
Incredible.
It's the first time this century.
Yeah.
What it does, diphtheria, if you've not heard of it, it's because we eradicated it. And what happens if it's back? You start to drown in your own mucus.
Yeah, it's not a good thing.
No. And I've had something really similar where, have you seen the mucus from the hagfish?
I have not.
Oh, well, take the time to look at an example of it. You'll find something on YouTube.
Okay.
And it's called the hagfish. And if you touch it, it starts to emit a polymer from itself, and it's hydroscopic, and it becomes 100 times its own density.
Oh wow, is that right?
Yeah, that fire, the stuff they use for stuntmen, which is a gel, and you soak it in water and it bloats up. And
yeah.
It's that, but as a mucus.
Jesus. And
you couldn't eat a hagfish if you were a predator. You go to bite on it, and suddenly you're like someone's put a fire hose in your mouth.
Wow.
For all this mucus that gets created from it, and it just swims away.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So I'm not saying that's what diphtheria does to you. It's an exaggerated version to make a point. And
I understand.
I've had discussions with my doctor when I've just gone, it's just endless phlegm that I can't get rid of quick enough. And he goes, oh, shush, you're just carrying on. And I go, no, I didn't have diphtheria, right? But, and I can't imagine just how bad it would be. I don't know how you treat it or what you're supposed to do with the person. If you hung them upside down, I don't know. But you end up asphyxiating in your own mucus. You can't deal with it. So that's just emerged in the last week in Sydney. Of course, we have that, I don't know, it's like a rodent kind of thing that in China, like Ligara, whatever it's called. That new virus, the monkeypox. Did you see they did a competition to name monkeypox?
No. Really?
Yes. Right, I have to do this because do you remember the competition to name the ferry?
Yeah, of course. That was recent. Recently, it was before COVID, but yeah, I remember.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's really funny. Contest. Here we go. Monkeypox naming contest. Because the ferry ended up with something ferry face. I can't say all of them on air. and it won, and their rules said they had to use the name. Right? Who asked public? This is the WHO. Asks the public to suggest names, and there's 3 ideas here, and you'll recognize the first one, and it's Poxy McPockface. Do you remember that? Fairy Fairy Face or something, whatever the fairy name was. Trump 22 is one of the next submissions by the people that's winning. These are the top 3. Or Mpox. So far, they're the top 3. It's going to end up. This is why you don't throw it to the people with the competition.
That's gold.
Right? Poxy McPoxface.
Poxy Mix. That's when you really didn't think about something too hard. We must spend millions on that campaign.
The Harvard Medical School director submitted Opoxid 22. Opoxid 22.
Pretty scientific right there, isn't it?
Well, yes. But he said this was only to try and quell the farcical Poxy McPoxface. That's right.
Do that.
The ferry's name was Boaty McBoatface. Do you remember?
That's right. I do.
And it was the public choice for the name of a British polar research vessel. Yes.
See, now, just to be clear, it says a lot about the public right there, okay? I just want to say that. I want to go on record for that. And that's why I don't like people. Okay? Hell, in fact, is other people.
Yes.
As we all know.
Yeah.
I don't like people. I feel better now.
I'm sorry. And look, there's a really silly news story that I wanted to bring up before I do go serious again. And as an Ethiopian pilot was suspended after reportedly falling asleep, missing the landing window.
That happens.
So they're flying along. I'm just going to have a little nap. And the next thing, Captain, what? Sorry, I must have fallen asleep. Where actually are we going to land?
We're landing, right? That's still on the cards, boss.
Yes.
Right?
You did the fuel calculations that if I point down, we're passing the airport we're supposed to land at. Right, okay. Oops. Yeah, hilarious. So monkeypox was there. There's a whole bunch. What was the other one? Polio, both kinds. Like this, I'm going to say it again. Is this the pestilence? I gotta ask. Like, it's just, I know it, and I'm not even religious.
Yeah, same. So look, the thing is this, right? A lot of religious people believe it was AIDS. A lot of people obviously believe it was AIDS.
Yes.
A thousand years ago, or not quite, but thereabouts, people believed it was the Black Plague, which in fact did kill about a third of the European population at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, hundreds of millions of people were killed by the Black Plague. So there have been these things. Now, AIDS clearly wasn't as horrific as we all feared it might be. I mean, it was bad enough, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't this global killer. The Black Plague was also fairly limited, and it was limited because, well, simply people didn't get around very fast.
It killed their host, and yes, we didn't have international travel.
Correct. And that was probably the key thing that saved people at that point. Mm-hmm. And the same for any plague that was going to rear its head.
If we had the Black Plague or the Black Death in 2018 or 19.
Oh, yeah, Dave and I be sitting in the cave now. So
that's right. Speak for yourself. I'm already there.
But but you're right. So I mean, these things have come and gone. These massive. I mean, obviously, you look at the I want to call it the Holocaust because that's the way I feel about it, of the indigenous peoples of the world when the Europeans came and brought their diseases along, smallpox, chickenpox, measles, etc., etc. Killing millions of native people in Africa, in especially in the Americas and in Australia. And well, it's just what happened, right? We find it it's part of history now, fair enough, but we forget that these things happen. But what's different today, and this is to your point, Dave, is the speed with which we travel. And while all this, I guess, you look at SARS-CoV-2, you look at monkeypox, you look at all those things. They, in and of themselves, they're not really that scary or fatal. They're just not. I mean, they're long-term consequences, and they're not the nicest thing to contract, but they're not that deadly. Now, what we're seeing though is a rise of all these other diseases that we thought we had to taken care of: diphtheria, cholera, polio, for crying out loud. I mean, the plague, pneumonic as well as bubonic, have always been around, especially in India.
And they
but
do
now
pop up from time to time. Yep.
They do. And then look, now that travel is coming back, and the one that worries me the most is tuberculosis. But now that travel is back on the cards,
MDRS version, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that travel is sort of, I guess, becoming a bit more regular. I think we will enjoy many more of these plagues going forward.
But the 6.5 or nearly 6.5 million people, because it's 6,452,769. Let's just call it 6.5 mil. Rounded up. People that passed away, according to the Center for Systems Science and Engineering at Johns Hopkins. Those deaths, that's not 30 million. It's not like the Spanish flu,
no.
right?
Yeah, no, agreed.
That's my point, right? I'm supporting your point here. Yes, it isn't. It sounds terrible. Yes, we've all been vaccinated, but now we're seeing a spike in all-cause deaths that aren't related to anything in particular. Just people up and dying now for no apparent reason that anyone can identify or anyone's willing to identify, given sponsor names. So this is pretty troubling right now that we're seeing the emergence of all of these. And how could it be that we've got an emergence of all of these things when we were reasonably healthy?
That is a good point, and this is really something that we haven't had a good answer to. What Dave. So we are arguably the best fed population in the West that we've ever been. Access to vitamins, you would think. Now, having said that, well, not really, because we are now experiencing, ever since the late 1980s, I think is when it really set in. We're experiencing all these near foods, right? And then a little bit later, Monsanto came in with genetically modified stuff as well. So we're having all this fast food, which really took off in the mid to late 80s. I mean, burger joints always around, but these massive global chains, like, and I have to mention names here: McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, etc. They weren't really a thing. I mean, but now they're all uniform, and I mean, look, my kids, I don't know why, but they love McDonald's, right? It's just I guess that's just what kids do. But you look at it, and it's not even what I remember as a kid. When I was a kid in Germany, and McDonald's came into Germany when I was in my teenage years, so fairly late, and it was actually a pretty good burger. I mean, we never had burgers in Germany at that point, and I thought this was pretty good, and it's quite enjoyable once in a while, but it's a far cry from what I used to consume to what it is today.
Well, it's certainly a daily food for some people.
Oh, look, it is, but the funny thing is this: it used to be daily food for people, especially in the States, because it was so cheap. That I don't think that's still the case, Dave. I don't think it is still cheap.
Well, not if you have lettuce on it, no.
That's the difference.
Well, lettuce now is incredibly expensive.
No, look, you're
for
right.
what it is.
But
when I was growing up, we didn't have a roast chicken. We didn't eat roast chicken because chicken was just unbelievably expensive. We ate more lamb because lamb was really plentiful
Lamb was
and
cheap.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
We'd
Yeah,
have a roast beef or something like that, but we didn't have roast chicken. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s where chicken, over like an 8-year period, chickens just became really, really super cheap.
Yeah.
That's not a brand name,
Yeah.
by the way. Super cheap. Auto. Plug. So that was a big change for us. But then we noticed. So then in the agricultural industry, the primary industry, there was a lot of things that started to change about that. So the chickens themselves were fed with hormones all over the place, and they became, rather than those heirloom chickens that grow slowly and lay only an egg every other day, to the Isa Browns, which have been bred to lay every day, and their growth rate from hatchling to the mature ovulating chicken shrank. That time frame shrank to the smallest possible amount so that they were more profitable, because you don't want to feed something unless it's providing you revenue. So they shrank that. Some of these, I remember getting chicken bones and things like that from one of the reputable brands of let's call it seasoned deep fried chicken, which did not resemble a part of a chicken that I could recall. Very long thigh bones or something like that, just extraordinary. And Franken chickens, yeah.
Yeah, I actually have now taken to only buying what we call heritage breeds of chicken. Summerland is one, Bannockburn is another. And if you compare them, and I made them recently, I roasted them for family and a few people. Anyway, point is,
I know you're awesome cook. I'm the winner at roast chicken at my house.
Oh, nice, man, nice. Yeah. But this chicken is a completely different kind of chicken, anatomically speaking. So I look at the chicken that you normally have, and you get you know what a chicken looks like. But with this chicken, it's a heritage breed, so it's an old style chicken. It's more expensive, right? It's also a lot bigger, but it had parts of the body that other chickens don't have. There were muscles in places that the chicken that you're used to just doesn't have any meat.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot more enjoyable to eat. It tastes like chicken. Like I remember as a child when my grandmother made chicken. We're talking in the 1960s and 70s now.
I want roast chicken now.
Right? Yeah, and that's what it tastes like. It should taste like chicken. And I remember a time in my youth. This was in Germany and I think also in Australia. We're talking like late 80s, early 90s. We used to buy chicken from the supermarket, and it tasted like fish.
Wow.
So when you roast the chicken, and then get the skin and all this gets crispy and all that, it tasted like fish. And of course, what happened was this chicken had been reared on fish meal or fish,
right. That makes sense.
Ground down.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that's really
just fish heads
that's
ground
really,
up. Yeah. From the other industry. That's right.
That's right. So yeah, look, I have to tell everybody once again, please invest a little more money in the real food. It is much better for you. It really is, if you can, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, you can. Okay, so what you could do is you take that chicken, you boil it, make a chicken soup out of it, right?
That's right.
Then you take that chicken, maybe only half a chicken, you can roast it. You can take the other half of the chicken and turn it into some kind of stew. Then you take the bones, and those bones you can keep on cooking to make more soup. So use it. It costs you more, but I reckon you can get more out of it as well.
You do. So the heritage chickens, rather than the Isa Browns, for instance, and I've got my last Isa passed away of old age. So that's fine. I've got 9 other chickens.
Okay.
And the majority of those are heritage breeds, and they're large. They're like almost a turkey in size.
Yeah,
it's how big they are compared to
that
little tiny chicken you might get at a hot chicken place. So,
Yes.
but the thing that was the hormones and the antibiotics that are fed to the agricultural meats is that's when through the 80s, as it became cheaper and they were breeding more and more diseases were prevalent because they were all in really close confines, and then we saw the caged chickens just being bred only for meat. They had to do something to prevent all of those diseases. So we found a huge spike in there being these antibiotics being fed to them. Now, everything has an outcome, whether you taste it or not. We saw the same thing in beef. So that's called feedlot. Feedlot is about them eating from a trough in just either mud. Do you know what I mean? There's no grass for them to eat. It's only all the food is purchased rather than them just grazing along through huge fields. So we went through droughts and everything, and this ended up feedlot being the only way we could sustain our agriculture. One of my clients was one of those primary industry clients. And so I learned a lot about that. And that's how I know the term feedlot. Now, I didn't grow up on farms. I used to go to my uncle's farm and when I was a kid and deliver the milk and the mail to the local area. And it was in a small town, and the biggest town near it was Casino. But it was a small town. It only had a single shop, which was just like a little tiny general store, no fuel. And that was the way that was. Right? So I had a bit of history. Not that I was a farm hand I didn't really do anything like that. But geez, I got sick drinking unpasteurized milk. Oh my goodness. I thought I was going to barf up a lung. Jeez, I was so ill. I was so ill. Anyway, but they're all drinking it like, it's all good because they were immune to everything in it. And that was without all of those antibiotics. My uncle didn't do anything. So, and they had pigs. I'd never seen a pig so big. But
right.
I didn't know. I never knew they grew to like 7 foot long.
At least they're monsters. Yeah, for sure.
They look like cows. They're so big, right? And so anyway, with all of that going on, we are what we eat. So with all of those antibiotics in the food that we end up consuming, it's like all the human race having all of those chemicals that we eat and antidepressants and what are the Xanaxes, whatever they call it. I forget they're called. We urinate all that into the ocean. And all the fish now have that. And all of those chemicals that I mentioned in a previous show, they're forever chemicals, are now available in rainwater everywhere on the planet.
For all of our enjoyment.
I know, it's fantastic. So you can just go anywhere and feel healthy and shiny in the sun and the rain.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey. I feel so squeaky.
Yeah, squeaky clean. Becky, one thing that I found, because the segue here is rain. I've discovered something. Firstly, I watched the documentary, then I wanted to back it up with actually seeing where the data lay. And something really crazy, their water risk.
Yeah.
This is about a water crisis that no one is talking about.
Well, it is interesting that we talk about everything but that, because ultimately, with the exception, of course, of oxygen, water is the one thing, or lack of water is the one thing that will kill us the fastest. Non-violent.
It's the 333, right?
Well, it is 100%. You're absolutely correct.
That's right.
So does everybody know what we mean by 333? 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. That's what David's referring to.
Yeah.
And of course, it can be stretched to the extremes. And of course, that's all. But we're talking about averages here, the human average survivability of these things.
That's to require you to be active. So if you
Correct.
only lay down, you could survive with less of those things or for longer.
No,
Yeah.
and that's right. And look, and Dave mentioned this in our private conversations quite a bit recently. But look, why don't you share some of the things that you have there? And I sent you another one as well, a list of all these facts of these, which are terrifying.
Oh,
Because this
absolutely, yes.
This is not a tomorrow problem, everybody.
It's now. It's
This
right now.
This is a now. Yeah, and then forget climate change for a second. I mean, this might be exacerbated, might be linked to it. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
It may not be. It doesn't really matter. But this is a now problem. This water problem.
So look, for those on watching this on YouTube after the show is aired, or concurrent with that, you'll see a screenshot. But for those who are listening live, the 17 countries that are mostly in the Middle East, they face the risk of extremely high water stress. And the map is coloured, so the redder it is, the worse it is. And the yellow it's lower, but it isn't eliminated. There's not one point on the planet that there's people where there isn't a water crisis currently. So Australia goes through droughts, and we've learnt over time as a way of preventing the extreme loss to minimise the loss as best we can. We have low flush or dual flush toilets. So the toilet has 2 buttons. If you only wee in it, then there's no need to really flush it if you don't have to. And if you do number 2,
yellow, let it mellow.
There you go.
If it's brown,
flush it down.
Flush it down.
Yeah, that'll do. Yes, that'll do. Right. So we have dual, and normally the lesser of the flushing, the 2 flushes, one's like a half flush and one's a full flush, and you'll try the half flush first to try and save water. It's just in our brains. All of our shower heads end up having to be low flow shower heads. Like I don't know. I always laugh about this, Mackie, because the water came out of one shower head once like it was atomized. Like you're going to spray a fly spray.
Yeah.
It was so fine a mist, you couldn't actually get wet from it.
I'm water adjacent. I'm near clean.
Near clean, that's very good. Lovely, love the segue there. So I felt like I was hydrophobic. So I think I've mentioned hydroscopic already. So hydrophobic, if you know what that is, it was like the water was repelling off me. I couldn't get wet. I danced around in the shower trying to find a better place to stand. No, that wasn't even working. Right?
I will spit on myself.
Oh, no, it just smell weird.
I know.
So what was really weird about that was that was in a hotel we stayed in, because they had compulsory mandated checks to make sure their water usage was fine. Now, we've been through a number of really hard and long 10-year, 20-year droughts in Australia where we just watched our water sources just completely dry up. Now, because of that, we put measures in place. But what we're seeing are countries that have never had this problem before, and they're now suffering so greatly that they're going, oh, I don't know, what can we do? And they're not asking the hard question. How long do I shower? What does my shower head just pour water over me like a hose that hasn't got a nozzle on the end? Just flow. The rain shower heads that just rain on you. They use the most amount of water you could possibly it's even greater than a single hose. It's like 2 hoses worth of water. We used to have to shower, and we filled a bucket up that was in the shower with the water that we would collect in the bucket before the water got hot. So, you turn the hot water on and it's too cold to get under there, so you capture that water, and we use that to flush the toilet. We would pour that into the toilet or use it elsewhere in the house. That's saving water right there. Now, in Las Vegas, they implemented a program where if you just dig up all your lawn and put gravel with some cacti, you would get a subsidy for doing that. And they were able to reduce their water consumption since 2012, when they realized all this was going on. From back then, they had the forethought at least. But at the same time, I think it was 30% or 32% they'd been able to save. But at the same time, you're looking at those luxury, huge water fountains and flaunting water usage like there is lots of it, but there isn't. Lake Mead and Powell, they're almost completely dry, almost a dead water or dead pool, as it's called. If you're using a dammed water source for power, hydroelectric, dead pool means that there's not enough water to run the turbines. So they're out of the countries. The 17, most of those are the ones we would imagine. So Qatar, Israel, Lebanon, Iran, Jordan, Libya, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Eritrea, UAE, United Arab Emirates. We've got San Marino, Bahrain, India, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Oman, and Botswana. However, scarce water in the US, Egypt, Iraq, and India. Thinking about where the populations lie, there's one huge name that isn't there. I think because this was 2019 when this came out, and that was China. China's actually suffering greatly right now, and the Northern Hemisphere is undergoing one of the hardest, hottest summers with the least amount of rainfall that they've ever had. In all the countries, Meki, around the world who have not had 50-degree summers or even 40-degree summers for that matter, and they've always had rain, for it to suddenly disappear, it shows just how they've taken water to be not a commodity, but what's the word I'm looking for? They took it for granted. They took water, it'll always be there. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So right now, the Yangtze River basin is at a trickle. It's now in dead pool.
We're finding all these rivers around the world and lakes, freshwater. There's freshwater lakes, obviously, drying up.
Yep.
It's just, you know what? I mean, again, this has happened before, here and there, okay? Of course it does. But this is now happening everywhere. That's the point here, right? This is no longer just an event over here, which is freaky, another event over here, that's freaky. No, these are events that are happening here, 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 and here. In Europe, in Asia, in America. It's happening everywhere. It's always happening in Australia. That's a normal thing for us, right? But in Europe and Asia, Italy, the Tiber, I think, is drying up. The Rhine, the River Rhine is drying up. The Yangtze that Dave just mentioned is drying up. Now, that's partially due to the fact that there's less precipitation in the mountain regions. There's less snow, less ice going through, right? So that's an effect, a knock-on effect, right? There's more ice melting. There's less of a reserve, if you will, to trickle through.
That's right.
Other factors, are in the industry. I mean, we use a lot of water, Dave. Our industrial processes use, not buckets, but millions of buckets of water. And of course,
they're one of the greatest consumers of water outside of agriculture is manufacturing. Yeah.
And funny thing is, agriculture is now losing out to industry. So we'd rather give it to factories than to grow crops.
Because that makes sense.
I think is insane.
Yeah.
I want
my iPhone. I don't want food anymore. I just want my iPhone.
I want a really large TV so I can look at food.
That makes me feel better.
But it is insane though, Dave. It is really quite, and it is happening, which is why it's a now problem, not a tomorrow problem. I was in Singapore I want to say before the pandemic, probably 3-4 years ago, and at that time Singapore is equatorial, as everybody knows, and there's a lot of rain there. It hadn't rained in months. It never happened before. I mean, never. I spoke to many Singaporeans. Taxi driver is like a 70-year-old Singaporean. Because in Singapore, you have to be Singaporean to drive. He told me he had never seen a drought like this. And I looked around. Normally, Singapore, I don't know if you've been, but anywhere around the equator is very lush and green. It just is.
And monsoon rains.
The rainfall.
You could
100%.
set your watch by it.
Yeah, they would fall, and then anyway. But things were drying up. And look, it was hot too, right? It was quite dry heat though, and everything was drying up. And I was looking at it, holy moly! I've never seen Singapore this dry with that many plants dying. And now it's sort of bounced back, but I fear, Dave, that this is just a portent of things to come.
This is the canary in the mine, Mickey. That's what I call it.
Indeed.
So, look, as far as water scarcity is concerned, I think from what I've been able to ascertain that oddly the worst off are those in the equatorial regions, which is bizarre because they normally have the most, feet of rain per month, and they even in a wet season, it's not the wet season now. It's just gone. The water's gone. So, but as far as underground water is concerned, I wanted to raise a point, and that was that I sent you an SMS this week when I was watching the documentary. It was in Germany. They have their well water level dropped 13.5 meters. That's nuts. What groundwater?
It's completely unheard of in Central
There's
Europe.
only one active well still operational in Germany now.
It's completely no. We've never. Look again. Maybe it did happen in the past, but nobody took note of it. But as far as I know, it's unprecedented.
In living memory, says the document, the documentary, there was never a time in history when this was the case.
Yeah.
Right. So in living recorded history, there was never a case. So what happens, Mickey? Because we live by water. Yeah. We all need it. And the climate refugees that we've been talking about for, 12 years, 10 years, well, at least on air, we're going to start to see them in this decade.
Yeah.
Unless something changes. There's a town right on the border, so right on the edge of California, where the ocean is on the bottom of the cliff. And they've run out of water, and they're getting water shipped in. But now that the source of that water that they're getting shipped in, the potable water you can drink, has dried up, they're going to have to close their town.
So, look, absolutely true. So I want to give you a few numbers here before the bumpers hit us. 4 billion people experience severe water scarcity today, at least 1 month each year. Over 2 billion people today live in countries where water supply is inadequate. Half of the world's population could be living in areas facing water scarcity by as early as 2025. 700 million people could be displaced by intense water scarcity by 2030. So this is not a tomorrow problem, everybody, right? I mean, imagine 700 million people on the move. Because you have no choice. I mean, with politics and, you've got a choice, you run away from a war, you can. I mean, some people tough it out.
That's right.
You take the water away, you have no choice. You must go. You will go.
It's like the 4 states that share Lake Mead and Lake Powell. There's 4 states that use that water, and one of those places is Vegas, and Vegas won't be able to operate. It'll be a ghost town.
No. I mean, unless they bring the water in. I mean, they have enough money to bring in water tankers every day.
But from where?
Well, that's the thing. Is it worth it, though, as well, right? Is it worth it? Isn't it just easier to build another Vegas somewhere else?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, time flies. Look, we're going to see you after this short bumper, and we'll be talking about false flags. This should be part 3. Take the time to donate. We won't be very long away.